welcome. We're so glad you're here with us today. My name is Sophia.
And I'm James. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're talking about something very important: how to master English conversations. If you've ever felt nervous or stuck when speaking English, don't worry. We're here to help.
That's right, conversations are the heart of learning a new language. They help you connect with people, share ideas, and build confidence. But how do you get started?
Let's begin with some basics. The first step to mastering conversations is learning common phrases. For example, when you meet someone, what do you say?
A great way to start is with, "Hi, how are you?" Or "Hello, nice to meet you." These are simple and friendly greetings. James, what are some good ways to reply to these?
If someone says, "Hi, how are you?" you can answer, "I'm good, thank you. How about you?" Or you might say, "I'm doing well, thanks." Always remember to smile.
Smiling really makes a difference. It shows that you're friendly and open to talking. Another useful phrase is, "Where are you from?" This is a great way to keep the conversation going.
Yes, and when someone asks you, "Where are you from?" you can answer, "I'm from your country or city." For example, "I'm from Canada" or "I'm from Mexico." It's simple and easy to remember.
Good point, James. Asking questions is another key to great conversations. For example, you can ask, "What do you do?" or "Do you like living here?" Questions show that you're interested in the other person.
And don't forget to listen carefully. Listening is just as important as speaking. When someone answers, try saying things like, "Oh, really?" or "That's interesting." It keeps the conversation alive.
I love that. Here's another tip. Practice small talk. Small talk means talking about simple topics like the weather, food, or hobbies. For example, you could say, "It's such a nice day today," or "Do you like coffee?"
Yes, and here's a trick. If you don't know what to say, repeat part of what the other person said. For example, if they say, "I love movies," you can reply, "Oh, you love movies." "Me too." It's easy and keeps the conversation flowing.
That's a great tip, James. Also, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes when learning a new language. What matters is trying your best.
Absolutely. Making mistakes is how you learn. And if you don't know a word, you can say, "I'm sorry, I don't know that word. Can you explain it?" Most people will be happy to help.
That's so true. And here's one more tip for today. Try to speak slowly and clearly. Don't rush. When you speak slowly, it's easier for others to understand you.
Yes, and it also gives you more time to think. Speaking slowly doesn't mean you're bad at English. It means you're careful and want to communicate well.
Exactly. So, to sum up, we've talked about using greetings, asking questions, listening carefully, and practicing small talk. All of these will help you feel more confident in English conversations.
Right, Sophia. And remember, the most important thing is to keep practicing. The more you practice, the better you'll get.
That's a great start. Let's continue this journey.
All right, let's keep going with more tips to help you master English conversations. One thing many learners struggle with is building confidence. So today, we'll focus on ways to feel more confident when speaking.
That's such an important topic, James. Confidence is key. Without it, even if you know a lot of English, you might feel too shy to use it. So, James, what's your first tip for boosting confidence?
My first tip is to practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Find small ways to use English in your daily life. For example, if you're at a coffee shop, try ordering in English. Say something like, "Can I have a coffee, please?" or "I'd like a tea, thank you."
That's a great idea. Real-life practice helps you get used to speaking English in different situations. It also makes you feel more comfortable with the language.
Exactly. And here's another tip. Talk to yourself in English. It might feel a little silly at first, but it's a great way to practice. For example, you can describe what you're doing. Say, I'm making breakfast or I'm going to the store.
I love that. It's like creating your own mini English environment. And if you make mistakes while talking to yourself, it's okay. No one is listening, so you can just keep going.
Another way to build confidence is to prepare for common conversations. For example, if you're going to meet new people, practice introducing yourself. You can say, "Hi, my name is your name. It's nice to meet you." Then add something like, "I'm learning English. What about you?"
Preparation really helps. When you know what to say, you feel more ready to start conversations. And it's not just about meeting new people. You can also prepare for situations like shopping or asking for directions.
Right. For example, if you're shopping, you can practice saying, "How much is this?" Or, "Do you have this in a different size?" And if you're lost, try asking, "Excuse me, can you help me? I'm looking for the train station."
That's such practical advice, James. And here's another confidence booster. Find a language partner or join a conversation group. Talking to other learners or native speakers can be really motivating.
Absolutely. Language partners are great because you're both learning, so there's no pressure to be perfect. You can help each other, and conversation groups let you practice with a variety of people, which is very helpful.
Yes, and there are so many ways to connect with people now. You can join online groups, use language exchange apps, or even find meetups in your area.
Another tip is to use technology to practice. For example, you can use voice recognition apps to check your pronunciation. You say a word or sentence, and the app tells you if you're saying it correctly.
That's a fantastic idea. It's like having a private teacher in your pocket. And while we're talking about pronunciation, remember to listen closely to how native speakers talk. Notice how they pronounce words and phrases.
Yes, listening is so important. You can watch English movies or TV shows with subtitles. Pay attention to how people greet each other, how they ask questions, and how they respond.
And don't be afraid to repeat what you hear. If you're watching a movie and someone says, "How's it going?" Pause and repeat it. Try to copy the tone and rhythm.
That's called shadowing, and it's a great technique. You're not just learning the words, you're also learning how to sound natural.
Speaking of sounding natural, let's talk about slang and informal phrases. These can help you sound more like a native speaker. For example, instead of saying, "How are you?" you might hear people say, "What's up?" or "How's it going?"
Yes, and when someone says, "What's up?" you can answer, "Not much," or "I'm good, thanks." How about you? It's casual and very common in everyday conversations.
Another example is gonna instead of going to. For instance, instead of saying, "I'm going to the store," you can say, "I'm gonna go to the store." It's more relaxed.
That's a good point, Sophia, but remember, it's okay to start simple. You don't have to use slang right away. Focus on being clear and confident first.
Absolutely. And here's one more thing to remember. Celebrate your progress. Every time you have a conversation in English, no matter how small, you're improving.
That's so true. Don't focus on what you didn't say perfectly. Focus on what you did say. Every step forward is a success.
Exactly. So practice every day. Talk to yourself, prepare for common situations, and use tools to improve. All of these will help you feel more confident in English conversations.
Great advice, Sophia. Let's keep this going.
Let's keep going. Now that we've talked about building confidence and practicing common phrases, let's focus on something really important: how to keep a conversation going. You see, starting a conversation is one thing, but keeping it alive is another challenge.
That's so true, Sophia. Many learners find that after a few sentences, they don't know what to say next. Maybe they get nervous or feel like the conversation is over. But don't worry, there are some simple tricks to help.
Yes, one of the best ways to keep a conversation going is to ask follow-up questions. A follow-up question is something you ask after the other person says something. For example, if someone says, "I like cooking," you can ask, "Oh, that's interesting. What kind of food do you like to cook?"
That's a great example. Follow-up questions show that you're interested in what the other person is saying, and it gives them a chance to talk more. It's like adding fuel to the conversation to keep it going.
Exactly, and here's something important. When you ask a follow-up question, try to connect it to what they just said. It shows you're really listening. Let's practice this, James. Imagine I say, "I went to the park yesterday." What would you ask next?
I could say, "Oh, that sounds nice." Did you go there to relax? Or did you do something fun like exercising?
Perfect. That's a great follow-up question. It gives me two options to respond to, and it keeps the conversation moving naturally.
Here's another tip. Share something about yourself. Conversations work best when both people are talking. So, after asking a question, you can add a little bit of your own experience.
Yes, that's called relating to the conversation. Let's go back to my example. I went to the park yesterday. You can say, "Well, I love going to the park too. I usually go to relax and read a book. What do you like to do there?"
That's such a good trick. By sharing a little about yourself, you make the conversation more friendly. It's like saying, "Hey, we have something in common."
Exactly. Now, another way to keep the conversation going is to show interest using short phrases. These are things you can say while the other person is talking to show that you're listening. For example, "Oh, really? That's amazing. Wow, I didn't know that. That sounds fun."
Those phrases are so helpful. Let's say someone tells you, "I traveled to Italy last summer." Instead of just nodding, you can say, "Wow, that's amazing." How was it? It makes the conversation feel alive.
I agree. And while we're on the topic, remember this: conversations are not just about talking, they're about listening too. When you listen carefully, you can think of good follow-up questions and comments.
That's a really important point. Sometimes people are so nervous about what to say next that they forget to listen. But when you focus on listening, the other person's words give you ideas for what to say.
Right, let's give our listeners another example. Imagine I say, "I watched a really good movie last night." What can you ask next, James?
I could say, "Oh, cool. What movie did you watch? Was it a comedy or something else?"
That's a great response. It's simple, and it keeps the conversation going. And once I answer, you could ask another follow-up question like, "What did you like about it?" Or "Would you recommend it?"
Exactly. It's like playing a game of catch. I ask something, you answer, and then I respond back. That's how natural conversations work.
Speaking of being natural, let's talk about reacting naturally in conversations. Sometimes, when people are nervous, they forget to react like they normally would in their own language.
Yes, and by reacting, we mean things like laughing when something is funny, saying, "Oh no?" If someone shares a sad story, or even just nodding to show you understand.
That's right. Here's a quick tip. Watch native speakers and see how they react in conversations. Do they laugh? Do they smile? Do they use phrases like, "That's too bad," or "No way"? You can try using those in your own conversations.
That's a great way to sound more natural. Also, don't forget to use body language. For example, smiling, making eye contact, or using hand gestures can make you look more confident and friendly.
Oh, body language is so important. When you smile and look at the other person, it shows you're interested. And even if your English isn't perfect, your body language can make the conversation easier and more comfortable.
That's true, Sophia. And let's not forget about using pauses when you speak. It's okay to take a moment to think. If you're not sure what to say, you can use phrases like, "Let me think about that. That's a good question." I'm not sure, but...
Those are really helpful. Taking a short pause is much better than feeling nervous or rushing your words. It makes you sound calm and confident, even if you're thinking about what to say.
And here's one more tip for keeping a conversation going. Use open-ended questions. These are questions that can't be answered with just yes or no. For example, instead of asking, "Do you like music?" you can ask, "What kind of music do you like?"
That's such a great point. Open-ended questions give the other person a chance to say more. You can ask questions like, "What do you like to do on weekends?" "How did you start learning English?" "What's your favorite food and why?"
Those are perfect examples, Sophia. So, to recap, we talked about asking follow-up questions, sharing something about yourself, listening carefully, using short phrases to show interest, and asking open-ended questions.
Yes, and we also mentioned using natural reactions, body language, and pauses to make your conversations feel more comfortable and confident.
Conversations don't have to be scary. The more you practice, the easier it will get. Just remember to listen, ask questions, and relax.
Absolutely, James. Let's keep moving forward.
All right, everyone, welcome to the final part of our podcast on mastering English conversations. I hope you've found our tips and strategies helpful so far. Now, let's talk about taking your English conversations to the next level.
Absolutely, James. In this final part, we're going to focus on more advanced tips and common mistakes to avoid. Let's dive right in.
One of the most important things to remember is to practice speaking naturally. We've talked about using simple phrases and common questions, but now let's explore how to sound more like a native speaker.
Definitely. One way to do this is by learning and using idiomatic expressions and phrasal verbs. These are common phrases that native speakers use in everyday conversation. For example, instead of saying, "I understand," you might hear, "I get it."
Yes, or instead of saying, "I'm tired," you might hear, "I'm beat" or "I'm pooped." These expressions make your English sound more fluent and natural. And they're not hard to learn, they just take practice.
Right. Another important tip is to use fillers when you're speaking. Fillers are words like well, and you know. They sound natural and are used to give your brain a moment to think about what to say next.
Fillers can make you sound more natural and less like you're reading from a script. It's okay to use them occasionally, especially when you're thinking of what to say next. For example, let me think about that.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes. Sometimes learners get nervous about saying the wrong thing, but that's part of the learning process. Mistakes help you improve.
Absolutely. When you make a mistake, just correct yourself and keep going. It's more important to keep the conversation flowing than to worrying about being perfect.
Another common issue is overusing formal language. While it's good to know how to speak formally in everyday conversations, it's better to be more relaxed. For example, instead of saying, "Could you please pass me the salt?" you could say, "Hey, can you pass the salt?"
Right, it's about finding a balance. Formal language has its place, but for everyday conversations, being more casual and friendly is better.
Another thing to watch out for is overusing like when you're speaking. While like is common in casual conversations, using it too much can make you sound less confident.
Yes, it's easy to slip into using like excessively, but try to use it more consciously. Instead of saying, "I was like, oh my gosh," say, "I said, oh my gosh." It sounds more mature and confident.
Great advice. Another mistake to avoid is speaking too quickly. Sometimes when we're nervous, we talk too fast and people can't understand us. Slow down a bit.
Absolutely. Speaking more slowly gives you time to think and makes you sound more confident. And remember, it's okay to pause if you need to gather your thoughts.
Yes, pauses can be very powerful. They give you time to think and let your words sink in. And they show that you're confident in what you're saying.
One more thing, try not to overuse filler phrases like, like, or I think. These can make you sound less sure of yourself. Be clear and concise in your responses.
Agreed. Instead of saying, "I think maybe it's good," just say, "It's good." Clear and direct language is always best.
Let's talk about one more important aspect: nonverbal communication. We've mentioned this a bit before, but it's so important. Make sure your body language matches your words. Smile, use eye contact, and be mindful of your gestures.
Absolutely, nonverbal cues can reinforce what you're saying. For example, if you're telling a funny story, smiling and laughing along with the other person makes it more enjoyable.
And if you're sharing something more serious, a gentle nod can show you're understanding what the other person is saying. Nonverbal communication helps to build a connection.
Another advanced tip is to practice storytelling. Being able to tell a story in English is a great way to hold someone's attention and make your conversations more engaging.
Yes, practice telling short stories about your day, your experiences, or even just something that happened to you. Use descriptive language and try to paint a picture with your words.
Exactly, and try to add some details. For instance, if you're telling a story about a trip to the zoo, include the animals you saw, how you felt, and what you did. It makes the story more vivid and interesting.
Another thing to think about is expanding your vocabulary. The more words you know, the easier it is to have diverse conversations. So, try to learn new words and phrases every week.
Yes, and don't just learn the words themselves. Learn how to use them in different contexts. For example, if you learn the word stubborn, think about how you can use it in different sentences. She's very stubborn, or he's being stubborn about this decision.
And finally, one of the best ways to improve your conversational skills is to immerse yourself in English. Read books, watch movies, listen to music, and follow English news. The more you're exposed to the language, the more comfortable you'll feel using it.
Absolutely, James. The more you're surrounded by English, the more you pick up on its natural rhythms and patterns. It makes speaking English feel much more natural.
So, to sum up, we've talked about building confidence, keeping a conversation going, avoiding common mistakes, using natural expressions, and immersing yourself in English. These are all important steps to becoming more fluent and confident in English conversations.
Remember, the key is practice. The more you use English, the better you'll get. Don't be afraid to make mistakes and keep pushing yourself.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope these tips help you in your English learning journey. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this podcast with your friends and family. Good luck and happy learning.
Happy learning! Everyone, take care.